All right. Again, Neil, thank you for joining us today. For everybody that's out there that, if you don't know this already, Neil Shah, he's the president and CEO of CFMA. He's a mental health advocate, amongst other things, but he's a mental health advocate in the AEC industry. And under his leadership at CFMA, they've been at the forefront of addressing this critical issue of mental health and suicide prevention in the construction sector. Um, Neil and I and Neil and KP, we've all talked about this in different venues as Neil has joined us for different conversations here. And I know when Neil was talking with KP Reddy on a fireside chat a while back, he brought this topic up, and it was a little bit of a surprise. If you're not in the know, um, about the topic. I think you're going to learn a lot today. I think even if you are in the know, you're going to learn a lot today. But Neil's dedication to improving the well-being of construction professionals has led to the creation of some impactful initiatives and resources, and also in fostering a culture of support and understanding about mental health and suicide prevention in the AEC industry and in the construction industry. So again, Neil, thank you for joining us today to come and talk about this important topic. It's great to have you here again.
Well, Jeff, thank you for having me. I love coming to your podcast and coming to the fireside chats with KP. So it's one of the highlights of my time. I am an advocate for suicide prevention and mental health. Certainly, CFMA has been at the forefront of leading organizations like ours. But the work was done long before I joined the organization. My predecessor was a big supporter of addressing this issue. We helped formulate what I would call is the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. Christy Domboski, who's our VP of Marketing, Communications, and Brand, is the vice chair of CIASP, and she's been a leading voice, not only for CFMA, but for this topic. And I think it's important for us as an organization to really speak to it because it's, for an industry that's looking for talent and it's got a skills shortage, one of the biggest challenges it has is this issue around suicide prevention and mental health, given all of the pressures that are involved in that. So I wanted to start off with a couple of numbers, right?
Yeah.
And again, thank you to our friends at the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. And thank you to my colleague, Christy Domboski, for all the work that she does as their vice chair. Last year when I joined CFMA, just around the same time, Sonia Bowman joined CIASP as their executive director, and she's done a wonderful job of continuing to bring that organization to the forefront. That organization isn't just CFMA. I think it's about 51 other construction industry organizations, not only us at the national level, but 56 of our chapters and another 112 industry and mental health groups that are really trying to bring this issue to the forefront. And why they bring it to the forefront. Suicide, death by suicide, was the 11th leading cause of death in the US, 48,000 some odd people, compared to homicides, which was about 26,000 people. So when you think about, deaths per 100,000, the suicide is much higher. It's about 4 times higher. It's twice as high as the homicide rate, and then for men, it's about 4 times higher than it is for women. And construction, as you know, out in the field is predominantly male. When you think about construction and safety, and one of the couple of things after we get talking, I'd love to show you a few of the things that CISP has put forward. But when you think about safety, traditionally you think about, falls, getting struck by objects, electrocution, getting caught between machinery, horrible things that happen on the job site. And OSHA has done a wonderful job of creating that awareness, putting quality protocols and safety protocols in place. But there are probably 5 times as many deaths by suicide than there are safety issues on the construction site. So that in and of itself is really why this organization exists, why CFMA is a big supporter for it.
Yeah, that's an amazing statistic. And from the time I was a kid, you had uncles and things like that. I've been in and around construction my entire life. And like you said, I mean, you hear about construction safety issues all the time. If you're in the industry, maybe if you're not inside the industry, you don't. But it's obviously an identified problem. But I don't think too many people, when you hear about construction safety, you automatically go to mental health or suicide. I just don't think that's on many people's radar. And one of the things, as I was uh, getting ready for this conversation today, I found a study. This goes back to 2020, so I'm sure this is unfortunately probably even a bigger number, but it says a 2020 study found that 83% of construction workers have experienced a mental health issue. That's huge.
It is. It is.
That's a huge number. And so I think you're exactly right. The work that's being done here is vitally important.
When you think about the culture that's prevalent in construction, and it's male dominated, out in the
Mhm.
field, predominantly males. So a large part of what we're seeing and really trying to address is this notion of a tough culture, a tough guy culture, where the awareness isn't there. And if the awareness is there, you're not speaking to it and you're
Mhm.
not providing the support and the tools that are necessary to help address it. So, and that leads to other issues, right? From a mental health, the stress that's tied to the work, the potential instability of the work, the potential loss of financial resources that may come from that instability causes individuals to do other things. It affects their mental health, but also starts to drive substance abuse. So we're looking at this not only as, hey, we want to get to, with CIASP at the helm, a zero suicide construction industry as the vision, but creating that awareness and getting to some of the root causes in terms of the work environment and the culture and the support structure that's there. And then ultimately being in a position where we're addressing some of the broader mental health issues associated with construction as an industry as well.
Yeah, yeah. Over in the chat. So Christy, again, thank you for being in the chat over there. Um, she says that she believes in the necessity to address suicide prevention and mental health integration in the construction industry. It's a professional passion for her as well as a personal issue. And I think, just based on the numbers that we're talking about, anybody that is embedded in or involved in the construction industry somewhere, just it seems like the math would support the idea that whether you know it or not. And I think your point earlier, Neil, it's the tough guy culture, however, whatever labels we want to put on that, um, not talked about, etc. I think whether you know it or not, if you're in the construction industry, the math must support the idea that you are somehow related to, or you have some connection to someone or some incident or um, uh, well, again, I guess back to someone that may be struggling here. Um, that's that makes this, in Christie's point about it being a personal issue, and I don't know the story behind that. Christy, feel free to share more if you're willing, if you want to. But um, this must be much more widespread and much more impacting than we know.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it gets back to, you know, the words that are used in construction: strength,
Hmm.
determination, grit, get the job done at all costs, on time, on budget, the kind
Right,
of
right.
focus area that just lends itself to the kind of um, hard work in getting it done. But those are the traits that make it a barrier to ask for help. Those are the traits that make it difficult to have the conversation. So we know the numbers are pretty appalling. We know that it is a additional dimension of safety that really needs to be factored into construction. And increasingly, because of organizations like ours for the work that was done to build the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention, and all the organizations that are joining in on this culture of care, that awareness is now there, and we're starting to at
Mhm.
least get to some of the root causes associated with it. But there are things that could be done, right? So looking at this issue as a safety priority and factoring that, not only, ensuring that we're doing all the quality control and safety things that are normally thought of on the job site, looking at this as one of those priorities is critically important, and normalizing the fact that, hey, we're going to have this kind of stress, this kind of chronic pain potentially, and both internally as well as physically, that we need to be able to deal with. And it has an impact on productivity and clearly has an impact on our ability as an industry to get the work done because of the impact it has on the availability of skills. We're encouraging organizations, not only other industry associations, but organizations that are part of our associations, to really start focusing on those things that make people feel part of something bigger than themselves, that they're not alone, right? That this isn't done in isolation. And then helping them see that productivity is going to be gained in the long term if you enable people to the latitude and the grace to deal with some of these issues in the short term, whether it's flexible working schedules, whether it's
Mhm.
mental health days, whether it's, again, just having a caring person, supervisor that's actually willing to listen to some of those issues that an individual may have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we can see on your background there that September is Suicide Prevention Month. Um, and it sounds like, and it makes sense, right? This is probably the case for just about everything that we deal with, but there's a micro and there's a macro, right? Um, so far we've talked about all the organizations that are a part of or that are starting to join, starting to get involved with the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. So there's the industry level solutions, right? We can bring awareness, we can put money behind campaigns and those things that we need to do at that level. Are there any um, are there any pillars that the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention are pushing forward that can and should be adopted and instituted on the job site level or in the organizational level when it comes down to the different construction companies?
I think the awareness and the literacy that supervisors would have, right? The training programs, recognizing that this is a safety issue, and long-term effects on productivity. I think doing screenings, doing check-ins with individuals, and making sure on the job site that you're taking care of people. And the word care comes up over and over
Yeah,
again. One of our alliance members, the Associated General Contractors of America, use this phrase "culture of care," but it really embodies kind of what this organization and this initiative is trying to do. I think going to places like CIASP to get the toolboxes and the toolkits that are necessary, those resources are available both from a training perspective to how do you have this conversation and how do you actually help
yeah,
support the individuals that are having issues.
yeah.
Leadership has a big, role to play in this. It's again, not only, get the hard work done, the grit, the determination, but it's making sure that you're looking at this holistically.
Yeah, yeah. I love the term culture of care. I love that idea, right? We're actually we're an organization of human beings, and we're going to develop this culture of care. One of the things that, there's a part of me that, as realistic as it is, there's a part of me that doesn't like the part of the conversation where, hey, the less mental health um, issues we have, the fewer suicides we have, et cetera, the better our productivity is going to be. That's realistic. I hate that. I hate that part of the conversation because we're talking about human beings here, right?
Mhm.
We're talking about human beings on job sites and job site trailers and um, driving cranes and laying bricks and all the things that are going on the job sites. And so I love that culture of care. And I love the fact that there are toolboxes. And I hope there are people that will watch and listen to this conversation and say, hey, I care for the people on my job site that may be suffering because, just that one number, right? It was the most simple of Google searches, right?
It,
Mental health in construction, 83% of workers back in 2020, and here we are in almost to the end of 2024. So that number is probably higher. 83% are suffering from some sort of mental health struggles. That means that it's not one of those things where you sit in a room and go, you look to your left and you look to your right, and one of these people. It's more than one of those people,
Mhm.
right? Between you and the one next to you and the one next to you, it's almost all of you are suffering here. And so these are the humans that you're side by side with every day.
In some way, shape, or form, right? And it's not only
Hmm.
the individuals, not the crane operator themselves, but it's also the effect on their families, right? They're working
Absolutely, yeah.
for a reason, and that's why I think it's so critically important for us to continue this conversation. By the way, Christie's put in the tool in the chat the toolbox www.preventconstructionsuicide.com toolbox talks. And there are quite a few resources that are out there and available because of the awareness that's been created with this initiative. CFMA also, because this was something that we like to think that this organization, CFMA, served as a catalyst for the conversation, and then lots of organizations have come together to help move this forward. And I think the challenge for us is not to let it just kind of sit aside, right? To
Mhm.
continue to have that conversation. So within the organization, although CIASP is a separate entity, a 501(c)(3) that kind of governs what we're following, we continue to have members as part of a committee that's driving suicide prevention and mental health awareness issues. That content, those topics are prevalent at our annual conference, part of our regional conference. They're part of events that are happening locally at chapter events. There's content in Building Profits, our magazine, or on the Content Hub for Thought Leadership. It's important to keep that cadence of information out there and available so that people know I can go and kind of not feel alone about what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, yeah. So if you missed that, go to preventconstructionsuicide.com. I mean, you can just go there and find more information, but go to preventconstructionsuicide.com/toolbox dash talks, and you can find those resources that Neil mentioned before. And again, thanks, Christy, for dropping that into the chat. If you're here live right now, um, you can just go to the chat and find that link and click on it. Um, the link that Christy posted there. So that makes a lot of sense to me, right? The content is going out in your newsletters. It's online, and by the way, if you're out there, just Google mental health and construction, and in the first one or two posts that come up, one is probably going to be from Trimble, which is a supporter of CFMA, and several are going to be from CFMA themselves. So it's not hard to find information, but I think the more information that's out there, the better off everyone is. You mentioned your upcoming conference. When and where is that going to happen?
So we have an annual conference in the spring. It's coming up in May of 2025 in Kissimmee, Florida, at the Gaylord Palms. And again, yeah, besides the construction financial management topics of WIP schedules and cash management, there's clearly essential skills that we're putting out there, and some of those are really directed towards recognizing, knowing what the signs are and when to speak up. Because even if you are a CFO or a controller, you're going to spend time with your superintendents. You're going to be spending time in the field. You want to understand what people are saying, understand the tone and the language they're using. Take a look at, are there absenteeism? Is there absenteeism? Are there tardiness issues? Are there things happening relative to on-the-job work, mood swings, etc.? And then maybe whatever's happening in their lives. I mean, there are things that happen from an injury perspective that may lead an individual down a path that's going to help, perpetuate some of the negativity here. So I think part of our job as leaders, whether you're in the back office, whether you're in the field, whether you're part of an organization that's a supporter of a construction firm like CFMA is just to make sure that people have these at their disposal.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges? I mean, we can speak aspirationally, right?
Mm.
Zero suicide construction industry. Absolutely. I don't think there's anybody that's going to vote against that, right? What are some of the biggest challenges, maybe maybe from the point of view of CIASP, or maybe from the point of view of a GC or a
Mhm.
sub or somebody like that. Um, but what are some of the things that are standing in the way of pushing towards that zero suicide construction industry?
Yeah, there are a variety of different reasons. Maybe not enough leadership training, maybe not enough of that culture of care that we've talked about. The notion that they're under extreme pressure to deliver projects and possibly deliver them by not having enough of the resources that are necessary in terms of human capital or potentially gaps in skills. That aspect is a barrier. And that leads to other things, right? That pressure creates a feeling for the individual that they're under pressure to do things differently. They may be working through pain. They may be using medication to help them through pain. There are feelings of, lack of rest and sleep deprivation that creates that scenario. So being aware of those things as a leader, I think is critically important. So the root cause is that leadership. But it's also an organization, if you are a worker that's working project to project, there's probably instability related to that, and you've got those worries and those issues on your mind. So it's leading to the feeling that you're hopeless or nothing's going to change or you can't deal with it, or those are real issues and you just ignore it and you've got this
Mm.
tough outlook on it, and it just continues to build on itself as opposed to having an outlet. So again, I think all of it points back to having the right culture, having the right leaders, and being able to say, okay, some of this, pressure needs to subside in order for the individual, the human element, Jeff, that you talked about, to be able
Yeah.
to take hold.
Yeah. Do you have any sense from the organizational point of view, the GC level maybe? Um, I mean, you mentioned leadership training, right? And there are all these human skills that are involved there. Do you have any sense of what sort of investment companies need to make in order to, and this obviously varies from company to company, but basically, how do we overcome those challenges that we're talking about? Um, if I'm a large GC or something like that, what is it that are we, in order to build that culture of care, are we instituting a new leadership development program? Are we any idea what kind of programming we've got to develop to develop that?
And this is Neil's perspective as much as
Sure.
CFMA or
Mhm.
CISP, but we focus a lot as an industry on things that a leader needs to know from a safety and an OSHA standpoint, from a financial management and a project management standpoint. This is just about adding to that and ensuring that the
Mhm.
curricula that an
Yeah,
individual is going through as a leader is
got it.
holistic and includes these kinds of topics. And again, the unwillingness to speak to them, the level of discomfort to say that this is an
Hmm.
issue, I think is really where this stemmed from 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I think the progress that we've made as an industry through leadership like CISP is now let's recognize that it's a problem. And as we know that's how you start to solve problems, is to say that
Right.
there is one. And from
It's the
that
first step. Yeah,
you take baby steps and move forward.
yeah,
Um, but it's not easy, right? It's that
no.
pressure of delivery, the pressure for the individual, all of the things that are going on in their lives, those are things that don't go away. Um, Christy is helping me in the background here, and really one of the things that, and again, by the way, her role not only is the voice of CFMA, it's also as vice chair of CIASP. So we've got a very strong connection back. Um, and the ROI, she tells me, is that a dollar incrementally invested in mental health, you know, prevention results in a $4 return on that investment
Hmm.
from productivity and efficiency. So it's critically important for companies, GCs, and others to recognize that this isn't an expense, but it's actually, ensuring the future of the work that your company's doing.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's good to know those numbers. And I think one of the things that's unfortunate is that many times we can look at this and we can say, yes, this is a problem, right? This is a huge problem. It's affecting human beings, et cetera. Here's the ROI, a dollar in equals four out. Um, but at the end of the day, maybe if something isn't mandated, that there are going to be some that aren't going to address it. Is is uh is OSHA involved in any way in I don't know. I mean, they're obviously focused on job site safety. Is OSHA doing anything? Excuse me. Is OSHA doing anything to address
There,
the
there
issue at
are a
this point?
number of different organizations. There's nothing mandatory, nothing regulatory. I mean, OSHA clearly is given the awareness that's been created, but there
Mhm.
are organizations like the National Alliance of Mental Illness. There's a Center for Construction Research and Training, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which again looks at it more holistically, that are hoping to continue to create that awareness. It's funny. Construction is very regulated in terms of a lot of things,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of things that are very fragmented and localized. So, being able to create a framework and putting that knowledge in the hands of the owners and leaders, construction financial professionals in our case, enables us to actually affect the change. So the awareness is there. And while there's nothing mandatory, no regulation in place relative to this, like OSHA has for other safety, I think part of what we're trying to do is to say, look, let's let's put the leaders in position to be able to do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that there's some action there. If you have joined us maybe late or maybe on time, if you have any questions, I said this early on, we'd love to make this as engaging, as open a conversation as possible. If you've got a question for Neil, go ahead and drop it into the chat right now. I think we've got the chat issue fixed. So if you've got something that you'd like me to pass along to Neil, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and we'll incorporate as many of your questions as we can into the conversation. Um, but again, if you've just joined us, I'm talking right now with Neil Shah. He's president and CEO of CFMA, and today we're talking about mental health in the AEC industry, and more specifically in the construction realm of the C of the AEC. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and we've identified the scope and the gravity of uh, the impact of mental health in in the industry. And we've got Christy Demboski. She's back in the chat. I think she's also across the room from Neil. So maybe there's a part of me that says,
Actually, we're across the state from each other right now.
okay. So, maybe we should bring Christy on the screen as well, because she's dropping things into the chat that are fantastic. But she says, first of all, go to preventconstructionsuicide.com to find out more about what the CISP is doing. And CIASP is Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. If you want some resources, go to preventconstructionsuicide.com/toolbox dash talks. And if you're part of the construction industry, you know about toolbox talks. That's your conversation you have every morning before you kick off work on the site. And then Christy says, to Neil's point, here's info from OSHA on suicide prevention and construction. So it's the OSHA website, osha.gov/preventing suicides. So there's more information
And,
out there that
and
can
the
be
the
found.
point on leadership, right? Leadership accountability. One of the things that CISP has done really well, and you'll see Speak Up to Stand Up behind me, is
Mhm.
get organizations to take the pledge that they will be accountable, that their leaders will be trained, will start to use the toolbox and practice some of the things that will create the right culture of care. 500 different organizations, construction firms have signed up for the pledge. As I said before, a whole host of associations, including a number of our chapters, have signed up for it. And then those organizations that are in the ecosystem. So part of what we're trying to do with this movement is get people to take the pledge, commit to do the things that are in that toolbox. And it's a visible commitment that says we recognize this is an issue. We know that it needs to change, and we share CISP's vision of zero suicides in the construction industry.
Yeah. And I think, my hope would be that every construction company, GC, sub, whoever you are, wherever you are in the industry, that you would sign on to something like this, because these are the people, forget what it is that they do, right? Forget the fact that they're operating a crane or they're laying a brick or whatever their job title is. Um, these are your brothers in the field, your brothers and sisters in the field. These are the people um, that wake up in the morning and leave their families to go to work and come home to their families, right? These are human beings that are struggling for a number of reasons. The pressures and the injuries and all of the things that Neil has mentioned. So I'm hoping that this idea of the culture of care will really catch on and spread throughout the industry, and everybody will sign on to this. Um, and again, resources, preventconstructionsuicide.com. If you want to know more about the what OSHA's um, has published, go to osha.gov/preventing suicides. And then if you want to know more about the pledge that Neil just mentioned, the CIASP STAND pledge, which again is the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. So the CIASP, that's kind of hard to say.
It is hard to say.
CIASP STAND pledge is at preventconstructionsuicide.com/pledge to stand up. So
And,
pledge to stand up. And you
and the
can,
pledge isn't just sign your name on a piece of paper or use the stand banner, but it's encouraging those individuals and organizations that are standing up to have practical resources, right? A construction firm to have mental health hotlines available, to have employer assistance programs, to train their leadership, to understand what it means to build that culture of care, giving their employees training, not only the sort that gets the project done, but mental health training to recognize when their colleagues are potentially suffering and the things that they can do. So it's really about spreading this approach and this philosophy of culture, and ensuring that every organization that's in construction starts to practice it. STAND, by the way, is an acronym as well, just like CIASP is. S is for safe, clearly about that culture. T is for training and ensuring that not only leaders but the organization has that awareness training around mental health. Uh, Raising awareness not only within your organization but with your partner organizations, normalizing the whole topic, the stigma, stopping the stigma essentially of not talking about it and not asking that question if someone's okay, and then ultimately decreasing the risk, and really using this initiative as recognition that this dimension of safety is critically important for construction.
yeah, it's interesting. In the broader mental health discussion, of course, there would be conversations, or someone would use the term a safe workplace, and they wouldn't be talking about, like you mentioned earlier, being pinned or electrocuted or being impacted by a falling object or something like that. They'd be talking about a safe workplace in terms of mentally safe, emotionally safe, and which of course ties directly to what you were just talking about, getting rid of that stigma and being able to ask that question, are you okay? Or being able to raise your hand and saying, I'm not okay, or I need help with something. Um, so, there's that, there's the both sides of the safe workplace here in construction. And, I think we can understand, as you were alluding to earlier, we can understand where this came from, right? We can understand um, the toxic masculinity, if we want to call it that, but we can
Mm.
talk about where in the past we've got a history of tough guys not being
Yeah.
able to talk about feelings and struggles and things like that. That obviously is changing and needs to change, leading up to this vision of zero suicide construction industry.
Yeah, it's not about male, female, it's about humans, as you so rightfully
Yeah,
said
yeah.
before. And I think if one thing that we learned from the pandemic and the isolation that many people felt as a result of it was you need other people to be able
Mhm.
to make sure that you can talk through some of these things that may come from that isolation. So this is all part of that, getting to that safe place.
Is so, going down that road for a minute, do you have any sense for what impact COVID-19 and shutdowns and this is in no way a political question, right? This is a question about the reality of people being isolated. Do you have any sense of how much that has contributed to this?
Construction didn't really shut down, right? The
Right, right,
construction workers went on site,
right.
and many construction firms went back to their offices fairly quickly.
Mhm,
So I think this is an issue that's been there for a
mhm.
while, and the stigma of speaking to it and the lack of awareness and the lack of training really prevented us from actually doing something about it. I think in societal terms, that raised awareness across the board, and may have contributed, certainly to some mental health challenges that we have as a society. I think from a construction standpoint, this has been, it may be exacerbated, but it's been there for a while.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense to me too. I mean, there's so much awareness that has come out of that. Um, kids that started high school or middle school or wherever they were, from a um, fully remote for a couple of years and things like that. And I see that, I teach at the undergrad and the graduate level. I see that in students in higher ed, right? The impacts. I think it has raised a lot of awareness to issues that were already there, maybe exacerbated um, by the situation of it all. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that happened as we look towards. And again, if you're in the audience right now here on this fireside chat, go ahead and ask a question in the chat if you'd like. Be happy to address those um, in the last couple of minutes before we wrap up here. But um, as we think towards the future, Neil, obviously we've got pledges, we've got toolboxes. Um, we have organizations and a large number of organizations that are signing on to this, which is wonderful to hear and to see. Um, you mentioned the vision of zero suicide construction industry. Are there other kind of big goals or milestones that have been laid out that you're pushing towards that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think the vision for CISP says it all, right? I mean, looking at
Mhm,
those things that I mentioned from a safety perspective
mhm,
before, are termed the fatal four. Well, this fifth one is overwhelmingly
Mhm.
significant in the construction industry. And I think just continuing down that path and ensuring that everybody's aware of the fact that this is kind of the culture that needs to be in this industry. We're also working on um, attracting underrepresented groups into the construction industry, both for us in the back office with financial professionals, but also increasing in the field. So you may start to see, obviously, people that are affected in lots of different ways that have the need for that support. You're going to see more gender diversity and more, ethnic representation throughout construction. So those are things that I think we have to couple into the overall culture that we're creating so that people know, hey, we're bringing talent in because we need talent from everywhere. Diverse and inclusive culture will help us grow the industry. But with that comes the notion that, hey, we need to make sure that we're taking care of people in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Why would I want to go work there, right?
Yeah,
If I
exactly.
don't have that, right?
Yeah, and if that's the kind of pressure that comes with working there, then we're going to look elsewhere. And I think our challenge as industry organizations is to make this an attractive destination for the next generation of not only, construction accountants, but project managers, superintendents, and skilled workers. So
Yeah, yeah. We just got a minute or two before we have to wrap up here, and so my final question is going to ask you to go out on a little bit on a limb because I know with CFMA your membership is the financial side, so maybe it's the CFO
I
types.
live on the limb, though, Jeff. I live out on the limb.
I know. I know that about you. You're out there hanging out on the limb, risking everything. Um, So you're normally through CFMA, you're talking to the financial professionals from the construction organizations, from the GCs and whoever, whatever the other organizations are, the firms are. If you were to switch gears a little bit and you were to address maybe the CEOs or the operational leaders of the firms, um, maybe it's a special session or something like that, and you were to walk out on stage and you were to look them in the eye and give them one challenge around this topic that we've been talking about today, what would that challenge be?
Listen, listen to your employees, understand what's going on in their lives, right? And use that as a way to not only enrich your organization, but enrich their lives in the process and their careers in the process. I think that's the most important thing as owners and operators of those businesses that they can do is to make sure that they've got that pulse. And it's important that you said that. I think as much as we deal in the financial realm at CFMA, yeah, and we want to be essential to the growth and success of construction financial professionals. Equally, we want the work that the construction financial professionals are doing, like suicide prevention, like creating an inclusive industry for the next generation. We want to make them essential to the success and growth of construction. So I think that conversation with owners is a natural evolution of a lot of the work that we've been doing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Again, I've been talking with Neil Shah. He's the president and CEO of CFMA, a mental health advocate for the construction industry. And I'm going to say in the background, she's in the chat. She's not
She,
in the office with
she's a
Neil.
champion. Christy is a champion of this initiative. And as I said, very active with the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention, and is currently serving as the vice chair. So it's very important for us as an organization, as CFMA, to be involved in this. And to the extent one of our leaders is actually actively leading, in the CISP realm as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Christy Domboski, thank you for being there and providing all the resources. So, if you're with us live here, you can just go to the chat and find the links that Christy has posted. If you're watching this later and you may not have the ability to see the chat that I'm looking at right now, two places that I wanted to direct you to. One is preventconstructionsuicide.com. So preventconstructionsuicide.com, all crushed together like one word. And then there are a couple of tabs. You'll find tabs, but one is toolbox dash talks. So preventconstructionsuicide.com/toolbox dash talks. And the other, and that's where you'll find the CIASP resources, the toolbox talks. And then the stand pledge. So the CIASP stand pledge is at preventconstructionsuicide.com/pledge dash to dash stand dash up. So pledge to stand up. And you'll find both of those at preventconstructionsuicide.com. And then if you want to know more about OSHA's policies, what how they're addressing mental health and suicide in the construction industry, go to OSHA.gov, the OSHA website, OSHA.gov, and then preventing suicide. So OSHA.gov/preventing suicides. And as we wrap this up, Kristen says, thank you to Neil and Christy. This is such an important issue in our industry, and these resources are fantastic. So yes, thank you, Neil. Thank you, Christy, for this chat. It's fantastic. Thank you for all of the work that you're doing to bring more awareness and gather up all this organizational support for the awareness, and also creating the pledge and pushing leaders to listen, as you said, Neil, and really treat the humans with care and create a culture of care here in the construction industry.
And Jeff, thanks to you and KP for helping us create that awareness. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should have said at the very beginning, I'm not KP Reddy, in case you hadn't noticed. KP, as it turns out, KP is on an airplane right now. So normally he would be sitting here in this fireside chat with Neil, but I'm filling in for KP Reddy today.
It's
Neil
always
and
a
I have had the
pleasure to
opportunity
speak with you.
pass.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Neil, and to everybody out there. Thank you. And we'll see you for the next fireside chat.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.